Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to Week 1. Welcome to the PrimeTime Fantasy Football Podcast. We give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout the 2024 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, it is Sunday morning. It is 8:30 a.m. I got my nice DK jersey on. I haven't worn it in a long time. We're ready to go. It's the first week of the NFL season in 2024. It is the first week of fantasy football in 2024. We've had two great games already, besides the sloppiness and the referees. But here we are. We're live Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, like we are every single week, to answer your fantasy football questions.
Absolutely. We are back. It's one of the best holidays of the year, first week of the football season, NFL Sunday. Nick, I know me and you will have our red zone up from 1 p.m. on. Second TV for you. You're going to have your Seattle Seahawks. Good luck to them against those awful Denver Broncos.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I get my beautiful Jets on Sunday night. I cannot wait to finally get to the first day of the season. Monday night, where we can finally get past all this off-season and all this unnecessary drama. But here we are. It took long enough, but we made it. Yep.
All right. So I do want a little bit of a programming note that I'm attempting to see if we could fix this. So our platform StreamYard decides last minute to tell me that we cannot stream on X/Twitter due to us not having a premium X account. So clap it up for that. So I just went live on Instagram. Wasn't really promoted, but that's okay. So we are live now on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. If you're watching on Instagram, though, your comments will not go directly to our feed. I'm going to show some comments right now just so you see. Here's Deshaun saying, "What's up, guys?" from YouTube. Here's Joe saying, "We are back." Here's John Caldwell from YouTube as well. So if you're on YouTube or Facebook, I hope at least Facebook as well. I haven't seen a Facebook comment come through yet. Your comments will come through, so I actually get to read them in real time, which is really good. When a lot of comments start piling up, you'll get kind of like a first priority kind of thing, and then we can actually pop them up on the screen. So if you are on Instagram, we will not see your comments. I do have the Instagram feed on my computer, but I'm going to have to kind of flip back and forth with my tabs. So just want that programming note. The best place to watch us is on YouTube. But if you do watch us on a different platform, that's okay. We're going to answer all your fantasy questions. The show is normally about an hour or so live on Sunday mornings. But if the questions are rolling in and me and Nick are both free, which we normally both are, we'll just keep the show going. So keep asking those questions. And we want to help you guys out this week and every single week. All right. So we have a first question here from Deshaun. Does Chase play? I don't know, Nick. I'm not a doctor and I'm not in the Cincinnati Bengals front office, but I know he doesn't have a contract and I know he has an illness.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's trending towards him not playing, but I really hope he plays. I think this is one of the best matchups he could have. No, most likely no T. Higgins either. So if you're a Joe Burrow, and I'll ask Nick the question, you're a Joe Burrow owner and you see it at 11:30, Jamar Chase is out. Are you starting him against the New England Patriots?
So I'm a Joe Burrow owner in 2 leagues. I haven't benched in one. I haven't benched in one before any news even came out. And I benched him because if you listen to our show on Friday, or all boom and all bust teams, I have Matthew Stafford in that league, and Stafford's my all boom quarterback of the week. He's going up against the Lions. He scored 26.5 fantasy points in their playoff game last December. The Lions are terrible against the pass. Like, they gave a lot of points to quarterbacks last year. So I was playing Stafford over Joe Burrow before any of this injury news came out. Unfortunately, in my dynasty league, Joe Burrow is also my quarterback, and I didn't really draft the backup. My backup's Baker Mayfield going up against the Commanders. Commanders defense was bad last year, so I'm strongly considering that one. But looking at the waiver wire, the quarterback situation is not great. I think Geno's on it. Geno, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold. So my best option is kind of Baker at that point in my dynasty league. But in standard 10 or 12-man leagues, you probably do have a better matchup than Joe Burrow. And what an interesting matchup, Nick, because let's say the Bengals were healthy. Chase is playing, T is playing. I think they're all boom players. I think you're playing Burrow. I think you're playing Higgins. You're playing Chase. And you're not just playing them. You're playing them with confidence that these guys are going to get you a lot of points in your week. And that's not going to happen, it looks like. So I think all the Bengals are downgraded this week.
Yeah, I mean, I had T. Higgins on my all-boom team. I was super excited to watch him go out there with or without Chase in a game where the Bengals implied point total, it's like 24 points with a 9-point favorite. So I was definitely all in on the Bengals this week. But if we see Chase is out and Higgins is out, I think I'm hitting Burrow on my bench. I think there's more than enough QB depth and enough of those guys like a Matthew Stafford, a Kirk Cousins on the waiver wire that are undrafted in most leagues. And, see this comment coming through, Justin Fields. That's another one that could really be a great start this week.
Yeah. So real quick, if this is your first time watching us, thank you so much. We do 2 shows a week for you guys that go on our YouTube and audio streaming platforms. Those are not live shows. And then we give you a live show every Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time to get you ready for kickoff right before ESPN and NFL go live. So you can watch us, get some fantasy advice from us, then go about the rest of your morning. We stay live for about an hour, but we will continue the show as long as questions keep flowing in. Kind of depends on the week, but we've had weeks where we've had 50 plus questions, rolling in at 9:30 a.m. or something like that. Your questions will be answered in the order that they are received. I don't think you could see the comment feed, but if you can, you'll kind of know where you are on the line. So please be patient as we do give in-depth responses for that. When questions are not being answered or when we don't have any questions, we'll be going game by game, talking about breakouts, sleepers, best plays, worst plays, maybe weather implications if there's like a hurricane or something like that. And of course, injuries. Week 1, we already have a ton of injuries before games have even been played. So that is the way the show goes. If you haven't joined us before, if you have joined us before, you know the drill. And that's why comments are already flowing in from our regulars. So the Sean wrote here, I got Jordan Love in one league. Do I pick up Will Levis, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, or Daniel Jones, or try to trade for one? And then at the comments, I guess they do flow in on YouTube. John Caldwell wrote Justin Fields. Nick, what do you think? You're kind of a Justin Fields truther. So if you're looking at the options here, where do you even put Fields?
I mean, if Justin Fields is available, that is 100% to pick up in the play. If he is the starting quarterback for the Steelers, and I think if he gets the job this week, if Russ is out, I don't think Russ is getting that job back for a while. The Russ has been hurt. He has not been a great quarterback. He did not look better than Justin Fields in camp. They gave Russ a starting job. They wanted to give him that leeway. You also have Justin Fields with Arthur Smith, who we think is going to be one of the best who's one of the best running coaches. So the design runs for Fields are going to be good. The offense should be much better with Fields than it was with Pickett last year. So for me, with the safe rushing floor and his fantasy history of being pretty much top 7 in points per game for his career, and we know he's not a great quarterback, but for fantasy football, he's been phenomenal. I should probably get this on a hat where it says, if you're not great at fantasy, being a bad quarterback, you can still be good at football. Like, you don't have to be a good football player to be good at fantasy football and vice versa. And Justin Fields is one of those guys that perfectly fits into that category. I'm all in on Justin Fields' fantasy season if he does get the starting job.
So just looking at last year, Geno Smith was quarterback 19. He averaged 15.7 points a game. He missed 2 games. Justin Fields averaged 18 point. I'm sorry. The number for Geno is 15 and 15.7 as his average. For Justin Fields, he averaged 18.4. He was quarterback 18. He missed 5 games total last year. So those are your numbers for those 2 guys. Some of the other ones, Will Levis, his average is only 11.8. He missed a ton of games. He didn't start the season. For me, it is Geno Smith. Listen, he has a lot of options to throw to. New coach. I think the Seahawks are going to be really, really competitive this year. They competed last year, but I think they'll be a bit more competitive this year. The offense is loaded. You can't really ask for many more complete offenses besides the top dogs, obviously. But in terms of a complete offense, you have an alpha, wide receiver 1 and my guy DK Metcalf, who's supposed to have a big season. They drafted Jackson Smith and Jigma last year, who did not have a bad rookie season. He was not the problem with that offense. His routes were good. He could catch the ball. He was fast. He didn't look bad as a rookie, but he's in a crowded wide receiver room with another guy in Tyler Lockett, who is still really good at football at the age of 30 years old. He's really Mr. Old Reliable for the Seahawks and has been for the past 10 years for both Russell Wilson and Geno Smith. So that's not a knock on JSN. There's so much talent there. But it's so crowded. Then on top of that, you have K9, you have Zach Charbonnet, who can catch balls as well. So there's a lot of talent. The offensive line has been upgraded. It still will probably be about middle of the pack, but I think Geno's the only solid pickup here, knowing that the Seahawks will be competing in games and knowing that Geno Smith could put up really good numbers. So Geno Smith's numbers last year, just want to pull them up before we get to another question. Last year, he had 3,600 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 INTs. The touchdown numbers need to go up a little bit, but the other numbers aren't bad. Then 2022, 4,200 yards, 30 TDs, and 11 INTs. Again, not good numbers. Passer ratings of 100.9 and 92.1. Even 2021 with the Seahawks, where he started a couple games, 702 passing yards, 5 TDs to 1 interception, and 103 passer rating. So efficient quarterback, can get the ball downfield, can get you a couple hundred passing yards per game. His real competition there is Kenneth Walker. So that's why I would go with Geno Smith, knowing that Justin Fields, to me, isn't a sure thing. And if Love is out for 3 or 4 weeks, I think you need a sure thing.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, keep rolling with the comments from John Caldwell. I'm assuming this is for today. Justin Fields or Jared Goff?
I'd go Goff, the highest over-under game in a dome. The Rams defense missing Aaron Donald. I think the Rams defense will be fine, but they're going to need a little bit of time to recover from that loss. So I think that I would trust the Lions and what is the over the course of the season, the best implied points per game based on their current spreads. And I would take Jared Goff this week. I take him more often than not over Fields, unless we see Fields truly own that starting role. But Goff, I think, for a late round quarterback, is probably one of the better picks. I think he has a real shot at the MVP award this year of being the leader in passing yards per game, because statistically, they're probably going to win 13 to 14 games. He's going to have 4,000 to 4,500 yards. He's going to get 30 touchdowns. So he's going to check a lot of those boxes. And week to week, he might not have as safe of a floor if it's the Gibbs or the Montgomery game. But more often than not, Jared Goff over the course of the season is going to be an 18-point per game quarterback. And Justin Fields, the rushing ability gives him that safe floor. But week to week, Jared Goff could go get you 30 any given week, and you would not be surprised. He can go get you that 300-yard, 3-touchdown game, which very few quarterbacks will do week to week. I think Jared Goff's going to do that 3-4 times this year, just based off the dome, the matchups, all of that kind of stuff, and that loaded offense.
The running game doesn't scare me, Nick, because here's why. Looking at last year, Brock Purdy, who is the best running back in the league, was quarterback 6. And then here's Jared Goff, quarterback 7 last year. He was averaging 17.8 points per game. He had 303 total points on the year. Jared Goff is going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year, I think. And for this week alone, facing the Los Angeles Rams, who allowed the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks last year, they allowed 19.6. Let's see. I think they allowed a good chunk of yards as a defense as well, passing yards. So Jared Goff is really a top 5 play, I think, this week. And I think he's going to end up as a top 5 guy, both him and Stafford. Anybody in the game that you have is going to have a really great performance for you tonight. So Goff is locked and loaded everywhere. A lot of quarterback questions. We're going to get to all of them. So from Scott Green, thank you, Scott, for joining us again for another season of the Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast. Kirk Cousins or CJ Stroud? So Kirk Cousins is facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. CJ Stroud is facing the Indianapolis Colts. Nick, you're muted, bud.
Whoops. I'd go with CJ Stroud, higher over under, better quarterback, clearly better offense. Kirk Cousins' first game off the injury, and he's going up against the Steelers, who I don't love the Steelers this year, but Mike Tomlin always has that defense somewhere in the top 10. So I'd be a little bit more scared of the matchup, where CJ Stroud, I think that offense is loaded and he takes the next step. Cousins could definitely outscore Stroud on any given Sunday, but I think for the draft capital you put into Stroud, just lock him in as your starter for now.
I will take the opposite. I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins. I think this game is going to be a whopping. I think there's negative energy all around the Steelers. Injuries. The Falcons actually might have sneakily the better defense, adding Matthew Judon, adding Justin Simmons. The Falcons are home. I think it's a big home game for Kirk Cousins in his first game over there. I think the Falcons might put up close to 40 points. I think Kirk could have a day. I think Bijan will have a day. I know Kirk coming off the injury, so it could be tough sledding. Since it is week 1, I'm actually going to back off on my take a little bit and say that you should play CJ Stroud. So you should really start your guys week 1. But I like the Kirk Cousins matchup a bit more. I think there's a lower scoring game in Indianapolis. But
no way. I'll bet you want to bet on that one.
No.
Okay.
No. All right. From John wrote, Geno's in a very good spot. A good spot start. I played Geno a lot last year. He is a good spot start, and he's a solid backup. From Joe, which 2 should I start? Raheem Mostert, he's going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he's home. JSN is home against the Denver Broncos, and Brian Thomas is away at the Miami Dolphins.
I would go with Brian Thomas and Raheem Mostert.
I'm with Nick.
Mostert probably is the safest floor of the 3 guys. He's going to get rushing workload. That is going to be one of the higher scoring games on the week. He gets all the goal line work, and that Miami Dolphins offense is not stoppable unless not by other football teams. It's usually by the cold weather or their quarterback's performance. And then Brian Thomas, something that Nick and I are all in on Brian Thomas. We think he's going to be the elite rookie for the fantasy season, I would say. And on top of that, we usually don't like starting rookies in week 1, but it does look like in 2 wide receiver sets, Brian Thomas is getting the edge over Christian Kirk. They were running Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis as the 2 receivers in 2 receiver sets. They do run a lot of 3 receiver sets, so you don't have to worry too much if you're a Kirk owner. But Brian Thomas to be able to do that going into week 1 of the rookie season kind of says a lot about how talented he has been and where they feel he should be, which is an outside explosive receiver. And I advise anyone in this chat right now, if there's a chance you could get Brian Thomas before next week, I would do it because that Dolphins secondary is not great. That Dolphins defense is not great. And if Trevor Lawrence clicks with Brian Thomas in week 1, he's probably going to have one of the highest jumps in draft value. Like we saw, Jaden Reed is probably one of the guys everyone wants to trade for. Xavier Worthy, a guy that everybody really liked after his rookie game. Those are 2 guys that just instantly looked great this season. And I think Brian Thomas has the upside to do something similar, but I think he's going to have more guaranteed workload than either of those 2 guys.
The other thing I want to mention is as bad as the Dolphins defense is, their one strength really is the $72 million man, Jalen Ramsey, who will probably be shadowing Christian Kirk, I would think. So that should leave Brian Thomas having some more opportunities. JSN might be a sneaky good play too. Tyler Lockett's dealing with, I think it's a hip injury. He's expected to play. I want to give you that exact injury. It's a thigh. I'm sorry. It's a thigh injury. He's questionable, but he's expected to play. This could be the JSN breakout game that people are, waiting for, but I'd probably give a slight edge to Brian Thomas as well. Maybe that's because I have to play him in a couple leagues. All right, from Deshaun, full PPR start 2 at flex. Devin Singletary, Chase Brown, Layden McConkey, Raheed Shaheed, and Demario Douglas. I'm going to take Douglas out of there. I think I'd take Chase Brown. I think Chase Brown could catch a lot of balls, especially with the fact that it might be missing both of the receivers. If you're missing both of the receivers, I think Chase Brown might be my favorite play in this matchup, Nick, because I don't know who Burrow's throwing to besides Andre, I'm going to butcher his name, Evioles, but I don't know who else he throws to. So that might be a good dump off opportunity with some touchdown upside.
So you also start 2, so add the second one.
I'm okay with putting a boomer bust in my flex. I'm going to go with McConkey. I don't know who's catching balls for the Chargers right now. Like, I really don't. I have Joshua Palmer starting in the league, but I don't know. I can't tell you who's going to be the number 1, 2, or 3 over there at the moment.
I think my safe start would be McConkey of the 5.
Why is he a safe start? I think he's a risk.
Because he's a slot receiver for the best quarterback that any of these guys have. Well, I guess if you Burrow, yes, but like Chase Brown's maybe the RB2 on the team. I think McConkey's got the safest upside for target share and the highest upside of the list. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. And then I agree with Nick. I would go Chase Brown. Devin Singletary probably makes more sense for the guaranteed load, but Chase Brown, I think, is going to get a lot of time on the field with Higgins definitely out and maybe Jamar Chase out.
Yep. All right. From Bryce Long. Bryce, I'm not sure if we've seen you on the show before. If this is your first time, thank you so much for joining us. Justin Fields or Joe Burrow, 4-point touchdown pass. I think I'd still go Burrow. I mean, we don't know if Fields is starting. So if Fields is starting, I still think you play Burrow. I mean, the Bengals want to come out of this game with a win. Burrow is still the top 3 quarterback on the planet. He's number 2, like in my opinion. I think you still play him. I think he'll make things work. I mean, he does have a connection with that. I need to look up this guy's name because I'm going to keep butchering it. And I feel very, very bad about it. So Burrow does have a connection with Andre Eviosis. I'm butchering it every time. And they did draft Jermaine Burton. Maybe he gets some work as well. I think I'd still play Burrow.
If we find out at 11:30 that Jamar Chase is out and Russell Wilson's out, I'm going with Justin Fields. If it's any other combination, it's Joe Burrow for me.
All right. From Todd Culver, not sure if we've seen you on the show either. Thank you so much for joining. We love all our older listeners and our first-time listeners. We're live every single Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. James Conner or Brandon Ayuk, PPR Flex. Nick, you had Brandon Ayuk on your all-bust team on Friday. So where do you kind of go with this?
I'd go James Conner. Brandon Ayuk has the toughest matchup for any wide receiver this week, going up against the New York Jets secondary, who allowed the least amount of points per game to the wide receiver position last year. The kind of method to beat the Jets has been tight end and receiver in motion. So expect CMC to have a good game. Expect Deebo Samuel, who goes in motion, to have a better game, and George Kittle. But the strategy is not going to be Brandon Ayuk. He's going to get shadowed by, and even if it's not shadowed by Sauce and DJ Reed are the two of the top 10 cornerbacks in football. He's really going to struggle in this game, especially with all the offseason stuff. Hasn't really practiced that much with the team and with Purdy. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of all out on Ayuk this week. I would look to bench him. I don't think you want to go into Monday expecting a Monday night miracle where he could fall very short. It's going to be touchdown or bust for Ayuk. Where James Conner is going up against the Buffalo Bills, who lost 5 key starters on defense. Again, another high over-under game, and James Conner looks like he's going to have a 3-down workhorse role again. So if you're and James Conner with Kyler Murray last year averaged over 15 fantasy points per game. So I think that offers you enough of a safe floor. Maybe not as much upside as a Brandon Ayuk week to week, but with both these matchups, Ayuk has one of the toughest matchups, and Conner has one of the easier matchups in a higher scoring game. So to me, I'm definitely going to lean on Conner's high floor and maybe not as high of a ceiling, but he has probably more likely to hit the end zone.
I would love to see the starting lineup, because if Ayuk is your flex, your receivers have to be loaded. And same with Conner, if Conner's your flex as well. I would love to see the lineup. I think I'll agree with Nick on this one. However, I like to play devil's advocate at times. The 49ers are an offense that is going to be more explosive than the Cardinals. And you're almost playing Russian roulette with them. You don't know who's going to score on a week-to-week basis. These are the 2 best defenses in the league playing on Monday night. So I do think logically it should be a lower scoring game, but you just don't know when you have an offense as explosive as the Niners. Points can come from anywhere, and Ayuk might be the one guy that scores, or he won't be. But I think if you want the safer play, I think it is James Conner. I think he's in a game where they'll have to score points, and the Bills' defense just is not going to be as good as they were last year. Kyler can definitely keep up with the Bills, I think, especially with the pieces he has around him, and Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, and Michael Wilson's a nice sneaky flex play, giving you guys that little bone. And James Conner has been one of the constants over there. So. From M. Banff, not sure if you've seen you on the show either. Thank you so much for joining us. I have Rico Dowdle, Jalen Wright, Jalen McLaughlin, and Bucky Irving. Should I drop any of them to stash Jordan Mason? He also notes I am not a CMC owner. So M, I'll call you M, I guess. Is this dynasty, redraft, keeper? Like what are we stashing all these backs for? Just for the fun of it? Are we stashing them for But my favorite stash actually right now might be Bucky Irving. I don't have him in enough leagues. I might have him in 1 or 2. The comments are glowing from the coaches. It's a keeper. Is it a 1 keeper league, 2 keeper league? Let us know the details on the keeper situation. But I don't think I'd drop any of them for Jordan Mason, because I think all these guys, I think McLaughlin has an opportunity to carve himself out as a starter. Jalen Wright would be the one that I probably would drop if I was to drop anybody, but I think I'm cool with the guys that you want. I would not want to drop Bucky Irving. He'd be my 1 on this list. then I'd probably go McLaughlin, Dowdle, and Wright. If I'm going to drop somebody, I'll drop Dowdle or Wright. Probably Wright.
Oh, I would say Dowdle's the one I would definitely keep. I'd go Dowdle, McLaughlin, and then I'd coin flip Bucky Irving and Wright. I'd rather drop Wright knowing that you're going to need an injury for him to really be a fantasy productive. But I think Wright, if one of those running backs go down, and both of them got injured last year, HN multiple times, Mostert near the end of the year, but has gotten pretty much hurt pretty much every year of his career. I think Wright is probably going to be one of the top waiver wire ads that week. So that's your call. I think Bucky Irving could take over Rachaad White or have a significant timeshare with White early on in the year, but I don't know if he's going to be good enough to start week to week. Wright, I think, in that Dolphins offense is more likely to start for your team. And if CMC, God forbid, gets hurt, Jordan Mason is like a 100% fab dump on Tuesday. Like, is what's going to happen. So I would
That's
rather.
the issue with Wright. With Wright, you need 2 guys to go down. With Bucky Irving, you need 1. And that yes, and that one in Rachaad White, as good as he was point wise, he was an inefficient running back last year.
I don't.
Not good.
I think one running back can go down for Wright to be productive because I think Mostert and HN are going to see like closer to a 50-50 snap share split than people expect. So Wright might get 40% of the snap share, but they were the number one or one of the top 3 teams with running backs last year between the 2 of them. So I would actually lean on dropping Bucky Irving, and I think he'll be more available to pick up later on in the year, where I think if one of these other 3 guys explode, like there's no shot that you're going to get them.
All right. Well, Nick G's pick right here is that Bucky Irving is a guy that people are going to be very upset that they did not draft initially. I think I'm going to be upset about it as well.
I own him in a couple leagues, so I will not complain.
Caldwell wrote, if Fields plays, him and George have chemistry. Where does the chemistry come from? Preseason?
I guess so.
From Scott Green. Scott, thanks for coming back for the show. Need a flex PPR. Brian Robinson, Greg Dortch, or Brandon Cooks. That's tough. Nick, I brought Brian Robinson on my old bus team. I think I still have my notes here somewhere.
Up against the Bucs.
Yeah, I'm not seeing my notes here. But he's going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were a really tough team against the run last year. They allowed the 3rd fewest points to fantasy running backs at 15.6. They did not allow a lot of yards on the ground. There's a lot of tough opportunity there in terms of we don't know where the ball's going to go from Jaden Daniels in his first NFL game. I don't really want to play Dortch. I don't really love Cooks, but Cooks might be the guy that I want to play. I don't know. What do you think?
I'd probably go Greg Dortch. I think it's a little bit of the riskier pick, but the Browns defense is athletic and tough. The Buccaneers linebackers are great. And Buffalo's defense is an uncertainty. But again, they lost 5 key players on defense. Like that's going to be a factor. And Kyler Murray back with this team looked much better on the back half of the year. Greg Dortch might be the wide receiver 2, 3. He might not be one of the earlier targets, but I don't see Brandon Cooks having that explosive play that can win you a week. I think the only one that could win you this week is Greg Dortch off, not a fluky, but like just showing he's actually the 2 on this team and being better than we expect. I don't love the options, to be fair. I think you got screwed with the top matchup with Brian Robinson week 1, but
we both love. I think. Do you love Robinson this year? Because I love Robinson this year. So
I
love
really
Robinson this year. As a year-long guy, you know what? I'm going to swallow my take. I'm worried about Brian Robinson, but you know what, Scott? It's week 1. I have faith in Brian Robinson. I would go Brian Robinson just for the fact that I don't have faith in starting the other 2 guys. I think Robinson is touchdown or bust in the sense that if you want him to get 10 plus points, he really needs a touchdown here. But if the Commanders are going to keep themselves in this game, they're going to need to score points that will equal red zone opportunities. I don't love it. He is all on my all bust team this week. I do have a case against him if you had better options. I don't like the better options here. And it's week 1, so I will kind of always lean player starters week 1.
Sure.
From Todd again, I have Cooper Kupp and Amari Cooper at wide receiver and Gibbs at ETN at running back. So I was asking about his team. That's an excellent team. Kudos to you. But Nick, how do we feel about trying to get Cooper out of this lineup? Would you rather Ayuk or Cooper? I think I would get Cooper out of this lineup. I think I'd put Ayuk in for Cooper.
I'd take Cooper over Ayuk.
Even after your Deshaun take and my Cooper take. We're off on the Browns this week.
Yeah, we're off on the Browns for sure, but I think Cooper has more of a solidified job and reliability and floor in this matchup, and I think the Browns are going to be playing from behind. I think the game script's going to be a lot better for him.
All right. I'm worried about all of the Browns. From Deshaun, one of our favorite questions every week is his 16-man league question. Pick 2, Jalen Polk, Greg Dortch, Jermaine Burton, or KJ Osborne. If those two Bengals,
go Dortch and Burton.
If those two Bengals receivers are out, I think I want to go with Jermaine Burton. Where is KJ Osborne right now? Is he on the Vikings? I think he's still on the Vikings. Did he move? I think I'm with Nick here. I think I go with Jermaine Burton and Greg Dortch. If Chase or Higgins is playing, I don't think I would play Burton though. I think I might take a shot on Polk. Rookie wide receiver, you don't know what's going to happen, but I think I might take a shot on Polk.
I think I'd still go Burton. I without T. Higgins, he should be the number 2 there.
But I don't know. But they really like it. And shout out to Joe. You pronounce it Yoshivas. They like Andre Yoshivas. Like he has a connection with Burrow. So if Chase or Higgins is in, Burton's the 3.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, I think KJ Osborne is on the Patriots. I could be wrong on that, but I don't want to start the Patriots receiver, frankly.
Let's see.
You can double check it.
Yeah, I'm Googling it right now. Yeah, he's a Patriot. Ugh, yeah. All right. I'll avoid the Patriot receivers then. All right. From Untamed Music. All right. So tell me I'm the unluckiest person in fantasy. You're the unluckiest person in fantasy. My man, it's barely the first Sunday. My tight end got his job stolen. My quarterback snapped his knee. Fantasy football sucks. Welcome to fantasy football, my friend. We're 3 days into it, and here we are. And you know what, my friend? I'm a Mark Andrews owner as well. Am I worried? A bit. However, I looked at the metrics on Twitter. I looked at some people that really do study tape. Mark Andrews, Nick, our stupid group chat, I can't even find it, but I wish I could find that link that showed the double coverage of Mark Andrews.
He was double covered on all but 3 snaps. 2 of the 3 routes run for Mark Andrews. He was not double teamed on.
Thank you.
When Isaiah Likely was injured in the game near the end and then came back, he was literally triple teamed near the goal line. So I'm not as worried about Mark Andrews as everybody else kind of is and panicking. I would actually buy low on Andrews if you can. But I definitely don't think I thought he was going to be the tight end 1 on the year. I don't think that that's in the range of outcomes if Isaiah Likely continues to get this kind of work. And not this exact workload, but like if he gets 50% of that production, right? If he gets 5 catches a game for 50, 60 yards, Isaiah Likely might finish as a better tight end than Mark Andrews because 11 points per game over the course of the season with some touchdown upside, that's 13, 14 points per game. The tight end 1 last year, I think, was Laporta at 17 or 18. So Likely could have the better season-long outcome, but I'm not panicking on Mark Andrews as much as everyone else is.
Well, you know what I'm a little bit worried about, honestly, is the other players on the Ravens offense, because if Likely's going to be more involved, I don't think Zay's role is completely carved out. Rashad Bateman's role is definitely not carved out. Derrick Henry looked slow and just out of place.
Yep.
I think there's a chance we have a 2 tight end set here, and maybe one's running in the slot, and maybe both will be playable. We'll have this conversation in a couple weeks, but I'm not going to, worry so much about Andrews. Am I upset about it? Yes, I'm an Andrews owner, but yeah.
I would also say they were going up against the Chiefs, who had a top 5 defense last year. Steve Spagnuolo with 6 months to prepare for Baltimore. Like they faced each other with 2 weeks left in the regular season or in the playoffs, like their second to last game of the year. So they game planned for this, and they know exactly what worked. And they did the same exact strategy against Andrews in the AFC Championship game last year. So I'm not.
Well, Andrews is out last year. They probably did it Likely though.
Yeah. So they double teaming the tight end is like the strategy that they're going with. That like I just think that that's a craftier defense. And there will be better matchups ahead for Andrews.
And as for your quarterback of Jordan Love, I hope you have a backup. If you don't, check out that waiver wire. And if you want some help on your waiver wire, we could tell you who to pick up before kickoff today, actually. So
yeah, I'd definitely go grab the backup this week, because next week you will want the waiver priority for the flex plays.
From AC Hellman, thanks for joining the show. Not sure if we've seen you on before, but thank you so much. We're live every Sunday, 8:30 a.m., answering every question on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Best place to watch us is YouTube. Half-point PPR, DeAndre Swift or Chuba Hubbard?
I'd go Swift. At home, Caleb Williams. I like it a lot more.
I'm going to go with Swift as well. Did you see the Swift situation this week?
No.
Did I get fooled by that? I'm not going to say it then. It might have been a stupid thing on Twitter. I'm pretty sure.
I would not say it because I did not see anything, and I spent way too much time looking at football news.
Yeah. All right. I do just want to look at where was Tennessee last year in terms of rushing defense. I think Tennessee actually had a pretty decent rush. I can't. The Titans are pretty decent as a rushing defense, but I'd still go with DeAndre Swift. You probably draft him a bit higher, and I just don't like playing Panthers. Just don't. All right. From Shades, half PPR, 2 wide receiver and a flex. Mike Evans, I think he's already locked in. Actually, there's some guys here. Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Adams, and Kenneth Walker.
I don't know if Nick's gonna like my take. I'd bench Devontae Adams of this group. I don't hate it. I think Mike Evans, you have to lock in based off what you saw last year. I think Jalen Waddle would have been on my all-boom team if I knew that T. Higgins was not playing this week. Kenneth Walker, Nick and I, both kind of all in on. Workload's going to be great. The new coaching staff. Last year, the Seahawks land the least amount of plays per game. That is 100% going to go out with the new coaching staff, with a Baltimore guy that typically played at more of an up-tempo. And Devontae, he might be the best player on this list. I don't deny that. But the quarterback situation and everything else is not the best. It is absolutely awful.
It's half PPR, and I'm team player guys. Mike Evans, I think I have Chris Godwin in my all boom team this week, actually. But I think all the Bucs players are going to have a pretty good performance this week. The Commanders' defense is very bad. Like the secondary is not great. I'm going to pull up the numbers here. The Commanders gave up the second most points to fantasy wide receivers last year at 35.4. For quarterbacks, they gave up the second most as well as 20.8. I'm actually a live tinker on the show here. I'm actually going to tinker in Baker Mayfield and for Joe Burrow, and I'll tinker Burrow back in if one of those receivers plays. But right now, my Dynasty League, I'm going to put Baker Mayfield in over Joe Burrow. So I think I'm locking Evans for sure. I love Walker this year. Like he's on my all boom team. I think he's a great matchup against the Denver Broncos last year. Last year against the run, if my Fantasy Pros wants to load. All right, so last year against the run, the Denver Broncos allowed the second most fantasy points to running backs at 24.7. I really do want to get Walker in there. I don't know if I can, though. Like, these receivers are really good. They all have pretty decent matchups. I think Walker's the safer play. If you want a safe play in your flex, play Walker. But if you want guys that can just score points, like Devontae Adams is either getting you 20 today or he might get you 8. So I'm going to let you make the call there. Nick made his case. I think Walker's the safer play, but Adams is your boom bust play. I think me and Nick both agree that Evans and Waddle should be locked in as your receivers.
Okay.
Victorious is the Oliver. And she also loves the podcast. They are fully invested. There you go. That's great for Nick because baby's not fussy. All right. From Deshaun, Ramondre Stevenson or Tajay Spears are the running back too. I don't love either. I think I'd just play Stevenson. Get more guaranteed workload in my opinion, but I don't love either.
Yeah, Stevenson's the more guaranteed workload. I think Tajay is the higher ceiling. I mean, it's quite as simple as that. You know your lineup. If you have a floor guy, go with the higher upside. If you need the reliability, go with Stevenson.
All right, I've got a couple questions flowing in. If you're on YouTube, you kind of see where you are in the queue. That's what we do recommend going to YouTube. We'll answer all your questions in the order that received, and we'll be giving you in-depth responses so you can make the best decision possible. The show is live every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Best place to watch and view is YouTube, of course. And we have 2 shows for you during the week that drop on our YouTube and our audio streaming platforms. If you're watching live, make sure to drop a like on this video. We'd appreciate that. Share the link with your friends, with your league mates. And then after the show's over, or while you're waiting for your questions to be answered, make sure you're following us on our social media channels, on our podcasting platforms. Links are everywhere to find the Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast. From Jordan Earhart. Sorry if I'm butchering that last name. Let me know if I am so I can correct myself. Amari Cooper, Jerome Ford, or Singletary at flex in standard, so not PPR.
I'd go with Jerome Ford with the standard. I think you're going to have the most guaranteed workload. I think Cooper and Ford are like more likely for a touchdown than Singletary. But with PPR out of the question, Amari Cooper is going to be like the 8 to 12 targets, and that it's either that and then the touchdown is the make or break. With Amari Cooper not getting those 8 to 10 points and only being like 5 to 7 yards down the field catching balls, like I do not like Amari Cooper for that format as much as I would in a PPR. Where I think Jerome Ford, you're getting the rushing, you might get some catches which aren't PPR, but total yards will be fairly comparable to Amari Cooper, and then equally as likely for a touchdown. But in standard, I always lean running back more touchdown than receiver more touchdowns.
I'm with Nick here. I just think this is guaranteed workload for Jerome Ford. I'm really worried about Cooper. He's on my all bust team. I think he might get shadowed by Trayvon Diggs or a different corner over there. The Cowboys are really tough on receivers last year, allowing the 6th least amount of points to receivers. Cowboys defense is tough all around last year, so it's tough to play either of those guys. But that Giants game, I think, is just an all-time low scoring game. However, with that said, I just want to look up because the Giants defense, I mean, their front 4 are pretty good, but the back half is not. I think Singletary might have the best chance of getting in the end zone out of all 3, if I'm being honest with you, but I would still lean Ford. I just think the Browns are a better football team, and if the Browns really want to compete, I think they're going to have to lean on Jerome Ford in this game. From Raul Havana, calling Deshaun Watson a legitimate quarterback, like calling Lizzo. All right, yeah, we're not in on Deshaun. We're both out on Deshaun this year.
All out.
And I was a Watson guy. Again, football take here. I was a big Watson guy pre the sitting out and suspension and all that nonsense. But I don't know. I think he's cooked. I really do. Joseph. I'm going to butcher the last name. I'm sorry, guys. If I butcher your last names, just let me know in the comments how to pronounce them so I know for next week. Joseph Austin, all the Bucks, I'm kind of in on playing all your Bucks this week. They should be very, very productive. From Trixie, should I start Ayuk, and if not, Pickens or Scary Terry, full PPR? Scary Terry to the moon. He's one of my favorite values this year. You were getting him around 6 or 7 as a wide receiver 1. Should be a very productive wide receiver 1. I'm all in on Scary Terry this year, but for today alone, the Bucs defense allowed the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers at 30.8. The Bucs also allowed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the 8th most fantasy points to fantasy quarterbacks. On top of that, Jaden Daniels looked really good in the preseason and in camp. If the Commanders are going to compete and possibly win this game, I think the Bucs could be an upset alert today. I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I think Scary Terry could be a guy that could really reap the benefits. It is full PPR, Nick. Do you want to mention that? Me and Nick are both out on Pickens with or without Russell Wilson. Nick is out on Brandon Ayuk. I normally say play your guys. So in the play your guys mindset, Ayuk should be played. However, I think Scary Terry is a better matchup, and I think he's a wide receiver 1 on his team. So I will argue against that is enough for me to bench Brandon Ayuk this week.
I agree with the take. I'm not as bullish on Scary Terry whole season as Nick is, but I don't love the Ayuk matchup, and I do not like the Pickens matchup, regardless of who the quarterback is. So I would definitely lean more on Terry McLaurin.
You know who Scary Terry is, Nick? Tell me what receiver has these numbers.
Okay.
In 4 straight years, 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Sounds like Garrett Wilson over the next.
No, it's a different guy. Another one of your guys.
Another one of my guys, DJ Moore.
DJ Moore. Let's look at DJ Moore's stats real quickly. DJ Moore with the Panthers. 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns. 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns. 800 yards, 7 touchdowns.
I like it, and I do think Cliff Kingsbury will make it better. I think Daniels will be good, but I'm a little bit more worried. I think there's a few more weapons on that team, and they should be in shootouts. But I don't typically love to rely on rookie quarterback first season.
It's fair
with veteran receiver. So that's just more of a personal preference.
All right, guys, thank you so much for all the questions. Going to keep answering them. We're not logging off anytime soon as long as these questions keep rolling in. They'll be answered in the order that they are received. If you're watching live, make sure you're dropping a like, sharing those links. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and get notifications every time we go live. From baseball, YouTube looks like a Miami fan. Miami looks really good in college football this year. That'll be exciting.
So that's
Should I say Rice? Oh, never. Oh, that's one of your guys.
That's Victoria's dad. And in our league, and Nick knows, Rashee Rice is my guy this year.
He is Nick's guy this year.
We'll make a quick plug on Tuesday when we do our recap and waiver wire show. We'll talk about the first games of the week and one of each of our takeaways. I'll give a little preview that Rashee Rice was my guy. It looks like he is going to be phenomenal over the course of the year. But I made the horrible decision not to play him in one of our leagues. Two receiver, one flex. Jamar Chase, who I expected to play and was leaning towards not playing. Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle. Waddle was the one that I kept flip-flopping on. And both of them would have been on the all-boom team, Waddle and Rice, after my guy T. Higgins. But seeing T. Higgins doubtful made me say, all right, well, if Chase is a lock, I'm going to move Waddle out. I'm going to put Waddle in because I think that's more of the reliable play than Rashee Rice, the risk. But I'm not going to complain. I have Rice starting in other leagues, so I will take it, and that has kind of been the take I've rolled with for most of the offseason. So as long as Rice does what I think he's going to do, I'm going to win a lot of leagues because I own him in a lot of places. So I will not complain about benching him for week 1 for a guy like Jalen Waddle, who I think could be great as well.
Give me 1 second, Nick. You take the show real quick.
Sure. So next question from Jake Hudson. I have Ramondre Stevenson, Jalen Warren, Devin Singletary, Rico Dowdle. Must start 2 of them. Who do you prefer? I would go with Ramondre. I think of the group, he has the safest workload, safest floor for any of them. I think Singletary might be more of the 3-down back, which is good. Antonio Gibson may be a little threat to Stevenson. But from what I've seen talent-wise, I think Stevenson is the best with the safest floor of any of these guys. Will get passing work. Devin Singletary, I think, is a horrible, horrible NFL talent. I think he gets lapped by Tyrone Tracy halfway through the year. And Rico Dowdle is kind of the guy. I'm all out on Singletary and Dowdle. Jalen Warren dealing with a hamstring injury. Do not want to play him. So I'm in between Dowdle and Singletary, but I don't like either one of these guys this week. So if you have other options, definitely send them. Maybe if you could flex out one of them, that would definitely be good because there's definitely more receivers with better matchups than these guys.
Yeah, I don't love a lot of these matchups. I'd also like to know if it's PPR or not. If it's not PPR and you're just really hoping for a touchdown, I think I might honestly play Singletary. The Vikings defense is just not good. Hasn't been good for a little bit now. I want to see where they were in terms of running or rushing. They were middle of the pack, kind of. I think I might lean Singletary if it's not PPR. If it's PPR, I think I play Stevenson. Just best opportunity, can catch a lot of balls, can be a safety blanket. If it's PPR, I think I'd rank them Stevenson, Dowdle, Singletary, Warren. If it's standard, I think I'd go Singletary, Stevenson, Dowdle, and then Warren.
I think that's fine.
2 flex PPR. Wide receivers are Puka, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and Malik Neighbors. So my running back room is a struggle. So I think he's trying to play as 2 running backs.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
I would try to trade one of these receivers. Your room is stacked. I would try to go get a running back because if these are your running backs you're rolling with for the season, it's tough.
I don't actually hate it as much for season long just because I'm a big fan of 0 running back, and these are guys that have safer workload. So you're hoping for Dowdle to break out or Singletary to be, 80% of Barkley, Ramondre to be what he was 2 years ago, which is totally fine if you go the 0 running back route. And then you hope to hit on the waiver wire for your league-winning running back. So I don't mind it as much for season long. I don't think you need to rush to make a trade because I love the upside of Puka. I love the upside of Garrett Wilson this year. Neighbors, I'm not in on because I don't trust the QB play, but taking Malik Neighbors, you're banking on top 10 receiver outside the top 30. Like that's kind of the range of outcomes for him. So I actually really like the team construction.
He also has Chubb on the bench. So after those first few weeks, hoping that Chubb gets going. A question from my mother. She has to explain the new kickoff rule. I don't actually know it. I think it's more so just like the players are backed up a bit and they can't actually move until the return man actually catches the ball. It's to avoid bigger hits. It's to avoid injuries.
So pretty much the way that it was for pretty much all of our lives. You just had a bunch of dudes running full sprint down the field, which, by the way, when you're in a stadium and you go JETS, totally exhilarating, and week one is the only thing you have to look forward to because the rest of the games do not go according to plan. But besides that, like, it is purely to stop and prevent injuries. Their NFL has already said that they're willing to make changes to it during the season because they didn't know how it was going to go and be perceived. But right now, we haven't really seen anyone do what it was meant to do, which was force teams to take the ball out of the end zone because they moved it from the 25-yard line if it went through to the 30. And then there's some other specific rules, like if it goes out of bounds, it goes further up than it usually has. So ton of different factors to it. We'll get more into it as the season goes on, I imagine. But the goal is also to see like a fast guy like Tyreek Hill take that ball and go 99 yards to the house and no one stop him. So we'll see if that actually happens more often than not and if they make changes, but kind of a confusing rule. I don't think it was totally necessary. I know it was safety first, but not as taking one out of football, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be sarcastable in 10 years for you South Park watchers. All right, no questions at the moment, our first kind of breather of the show, so we're going to just kind of go through the games, talk about mostly injuries and maybe anything else that we kind of like or dislike. But if you have questions, drop them in, and your questions are going to get priority. Again, for your first-time listeners or watchers, thank you so much for joining us. We're live every single Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. The best way to watch and listen to the show is actually through YouTube, as your comments will get bumped up immediately to us, and then you can actually see the queue of how many comments are in front of you, at least on YouTube. You can find links to everywhere where we are through our Linktree. It's on all our social media, so you can be following us on Instagram and Twitter/X. You can be hopefully subscribe to us on our YouTube. If you're not, please do that. Hit the bell icon to get notifications every time we are live. If you'd like to listen on your audio streaming platforms, go to our Apple Podcast or Spotify. Make sure you're subscribed over there as well. We'd appreciate all the support that you guys can give us. So, while we don't have any more questions in the queue, let's go through some of these games. So first off, the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Atlanta Falcons. The injuries are on the Steelers side. Russell Wilson's calf injury. This seems like a true questionable, Nick. He is questionable. Normally questionables play. This seems like a true questionable where they're going to test it, and Mike Tomlin will make a call if he thinks Russell Wilson is the best possible starter for his team this week. Other notes here, Nick likes Najee Harris. I do not like Najee Harris, at least for this week. And we both do not like Deontay Johnson. So, Nick, your thoughts on this game? What'd you say?
George Pickens, not Deontay Johnson.
Yes, you're right. I'm Steelered out. All right, Nick, your thoughts on this game?
So there's a few questions I want answered as I'm looking at all the week one matchups. Mine are going to be on the Atlanta side of the ball. And I want to see just how good Kyle Pitts and Drake London are and who really is going to be more of that one on the team. Another thing I'm looking to see is Algier going to have not a similar role, but still a significant role taking away Bijan Robinson's ceiling to be the RB1 in fantasy, which is where you drafted him to be. Bijan, I think everybody really liked this year. Some people love him. But we're going to know in week one if Tyler Algier is out there 40% of snaps. That's not the ceiling for Bijan Robinson is so much lower than I think he was drafted to be. So that's something I'm definitely keeping my eye out on because he was a real projected pick. Like Breece Hall, as much as like you could like him as the RB1, 2, 3, 4, wherever you like him in your rankings. He last year proved that he deserves to be in that top 3 conversation for fantasy football. So that's a big question that I want from Bijan Robinson. And Russell Wilson, I will say this real quick, if you're thinking about Justin Fields, if he's on your waiver wire, go add him. I saw reports from Steelers training camp or from beat writers that historically Tom Coughlin has benched guys with calf injuries and lower ankle injuries. He leans on the side of caution with that. So if this was another injury for Russell Wilson, it would be more likely he were to play. That would be a Mike Tomlin call, not a doctor call. So I just would be a little bit more trepidatious. And if you're thinking about Fields, if you really liked him for years past, if you think if he gets the starting job, he could be your starter or a good backup, take him now, because he will not be available next week if he has a good week against Atlanta, because it's going to be his job to lose.
Yep. A couple more questions now. Let's answer them. From Deshaun. No dumb questions on the show. He says, do I consider starting Jaden Daniels over Dak Prescott? If it wasn't week 1, I would have a legitimate argument here. I mean, the Bucs have allowed the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks last year. They also allowed the 8th most fantasy points to receivers last year. That means Daniels has a good matchup. As for Dak Prescott, the Browns allowed the 4th least amount of points to quarterbacks last year. And as for receivers, they allowed the 2nd least points behind Nick's New York Jets. So it is a bad matchup for Dak Prescott. And they're coming off that really bad playoff loss. Nick, I say play your starters, so I think you probably play Dak, but I don't know. I'd be really tempted to play Daniels here. It's tough for the rookie quarterback. I'd probably still play Dak because I normally go with the safer play, but Daniels has a better matchup.
Daniels definitely has a better matchup, and I think over the course of the season, you probably lean Daniels more than Dak. But look, I think we let a lot of the Dak talk get out of hand a little bit over the offseason. Dak for fantasy football, and in every single one of my drafts, Dak has fallen this year, and some much further than others. I saw Dak go all the way to the 11th, 12th round in one of my leagues, which to me doesn't make sense. He's been, when he's healthy, a top 5 fantasy quarterback pretty much every single season. He was debated for the MVP award up until 2 weeks left in the season. So for me, I like Dak Prescott across the course of the season. He is a 4,500 yard passer. He is a 30 touchdown guy. And if you're a pocket quarterback, that works for fantasy football. Now, if it's week to week, the Browns matchup is definitely tougher. But Jaden Daniels is a rookie in his first game. I want to see it before I put him out there. And Nick and I are all in on Jaden Daniels this year. We think he's going to be a superstar fantasy breakout. I think he is the Justin Fields, but he might be better for football than Justin Fields, like where the rushing upside's there. You also have Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator, who was the head coach with Kyler Murray when he was a top 5 quarterback as a rookie. So a lot of things line up for Daniels to have a good year, but slow the roll. Rookie season, week 1. If Jaden Daniels goes out and puts 30 points up this week, you're not going to be pissed off because you played Dak Prescott. You're going to be hyped that you got a steal of the draft that late. Like, just enjoy it on your bench if that's what it is this week.
Let me give one scenario here, and I don't know Deshaun's scenario, but hypothetically, there's a hypothetical here, and it's for anybody listening if you're in a similar situation as Deshaun. If you have Dak and Daniels and your opponent had Saquon Barkley, put in Jaden Daniels. If you have Dak and Daniels and you had Mark Andrews and your opponent had Pacheco and Rashee Rice, put in Jaden Daniels. If you are in a hole, and projections may not mean anything, but if you were in a hole where you're projected to lose by 20, play Daniels over Dak. Because if Daniels craps the bed, oh, well, you probably would have lost anyway, for being honest with you. But I think Daniels has a chance to be a top 5 quarterback this week. I don't think Dak's top 5 this week. I think he's top 10 somewhere. I think he'll be fine. But I think Daniels has a real boom-bust potential. So look at your matchup after these first 2 games.
That's fine.
All right, from Triple Double, trade offer. I send Jamar Chase and receive Achane and Harrison Jr. Do I accept? Or would we accept? I would not accept it. I would need to see your team, but I can't imagine your running backs are already depleted at this point. You just drafted Jamar Chase like a week ago, probably. Chase is one of X amount of guys who could finish as number 1 at his position by the end of the year. And I don't want to trade that. I don't think Marvin Harrison ends up being a top 5 receiver. I don't think he ends up being a top 10 receiver. Nick likes Achane a lot more than I do. I don't think he ends up being a top 10 running back this year. I think he's injury prone. I think he's competing with Mostert. I think there's a lot of red flags. So although you're technically getting good value, and a booster to your lineup. I don't want to trade a guy that I just drafted probably with the 5th or 6th overall pick less than a week ago, who, yes, he might be holding out, but he's not hurt. Not like he's coming off an injury. Like, he's still going to go in there and play ball with Joe Burrow sooner rather than later. So I would not want to send Jamar Chase out. I would have to have an offer that I really like, and this is not an offer that I really like.
I totally disagree with you here. I would 100% take this trade. And it's more so a value question to me. Jamar Chase, first-round pick, Devon Achane, Marvin Harrison Jr., both going in the second round. I mean, if you could add 2 high-quality starters to your team right now, and it's not like you're trading Amon-Ra or CeeDee Lamb or Tyreek Hill, one of those guys where, like, we know they're out there, we know they're healthy, we know that they are going to finish top 3 if everything goes according to plan. Jamar Chase, it's 2 hours before the injury report, and we don't even know if he's playing week 1 or multiple games this season. Like, he could totally sit out for the entire year. He has all the leverage to right now because the Bengals have a cheap owner and they're not willing to pay their stars. So for me, if it were another superstar receiver, it's a different question to me. But you can get a guy like Devon Achane, who I am super high on this year. I think he's a top 5 running back by the end of the year if he stays healthy. He has the upside of the RB1 on the year. Marvin Harrison Jr., we didn't love his ADP of a early second round guy, but the guaranteed workload, the high explosive offense, people don't love Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray's like a fringe top 10 quarterback, probably somewhere in the 11 to 13 range. I think that it's a much better duo and is probably going to replace a flex player like a Devin Singletary. And that upside is so much higher than just leaving Jamar Chase. And if he's out multiple games, like, you will regret that you didn't take this trade. I don't think you'll regret.
Let me ask you this. Where were you drafting Chase a week ago?
Chase in my draft, I had one draft where Chase in a standard PPR league year to year fell all the way to the 8 to the 10 pick.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you were drafting, right? You Nick Depsalis is drafting. You're at 8. I offer you 2 seconds. Are you taking or second and early third? So my second and third for Jamar Chase. Are you taking that on draft night?
Yes.
I would not. I would not sacrifice that first round pick. I just wouldn't, because the value is ridiculous from a first round pick for the most part.
No, the gap from Jamar Chase to, and yes, it's a rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, it's more speculative, but if we're just talking the draft pick, the gap from Jamar Chase to Brandon Ayuk or Mike Evans or Chris Olave or Drake London, who are in that range, is not massive. And then you add a superstar running back 1 with it. Like, you're adding essentially a low-end RB1 and a low-end wide receiver 1 for what their ADP is. Like, for a mid-end wide receiver 1, Jamar Chase's ADP was 4, 5, 6. So for the receiver. So I don't think the gap is as significant as it would be if it were CeeDee Lamb, who is the wide receiver 1. The gap from 1, 2, and 3 to 5 is significantly different. Like, I don't see that big of a gap. Maybe it's 3 to 4 to 5 points per week from your wide receiver position over the course of the year. But Achane is going to be 10 points per game better than who your second flex option most likely is over the course of the year. So to me, it makes more sense to pull the trigger.
All right. I have regretted trading first round picks in the past, and I think it could bite you in the butt, especially before people have even played snaps. From Jesus joining the show again, thank you so much. I know you guys have had to wait a couple minutes for our questions, but we want to give you guys in-depth responses, so please be patient. The Cincinnati defense against the Patriots or the Seattle defense against the Broncos? I like the Bengals defense a bit more.
Me too, although I do think that Seattle's a very, very good option this week.
I think the Bengals have more stars on their defense. Seattle revamped their defense, and I think they have a better defensive coordinator at this point, a better coordinator and better coach for what they're going to do. But I don't think we're going to see a full-fledged Seattle defensive machine for another year or two, when McDonald can kind of draft his guys in free agency and stuff like that. They do have a good defense. I do like my Hawks. I think they'll be very competitive, but I think the Bengals have a more complete defense with a couple stars on them.
And I don't think you could really go wrong this week with either. Like, you're not going up against a superstar offense. I would just bank on the fact of the Patriots turning the ball over more than Bo Nix does.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, from James Farley. James, not sure if you've been on the show before, but if not, thank you so much for joining. What two do I start out of these tomorrow? Well, I guess today, actually. Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell, or Chuba Hubbard. I have Scary Terry and Godwin in, but it's tough with the rain. I have Richardson, so could stack with him. Okay, where's there rain? Is there rain in Washington? How much rain is in Washington? Or it's in Tampa, I believe. Or the game's in Tampa, right? The game's in Tampa.
Yeah, which means it's going to rain every 30 minutes for 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm a Florida guy. I live down in Florida, so I get it. Let's look at the forecast right now in Tampa.
I'll just quickly give you...
There's a 30% chance of rain from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So listen, Terry McLaurin, I spoke about earlier in the show. If you didn't hear it already, I'll give you a quick spiel on Terry McLaurin. He's facing the Bucs this week, and the Bucs last year allowed the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers at 30.8. And then they also allowed the 8th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Now for the Commanders, they allowed the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers at 35.4 and the 2nd most to quarterbacks at 20.8. So I think you're right there with Terry McLaurin and Chris Godwin. I had Godwin in my all boom team this week. I think you're right there. I wouldn't want to play Adonai Mitchell. I don't know if he's the 2 or 3 over there. I don't know what we're going to see from the Colts, if being completely honest with you, with Richardson. Yeah. Don't want to play a Panther. I'm kind of always out on playing a Panther if I can. And if this is PPR, please tell us if this is PPR. Because I might change my opinion. I probably won't. But if this is PPR, I'd definitely rather have those 2 receivers in there than Chuba Hubbard. Brian Thomas, he will break out. I don't know when. Could be this week. Could be next week. Could be week 5. I want to play the guys that I know could have really good games today.
I'm with McLaurin. And then I think you could flip Godwin, Brian Thomas Jr. But with a big Knicks guy, I'll back my boy here, and I'll go with Godwin.
And we both do really like Brian Thomas. I don't know how many leagues you have him in, Nick. I think I have him in 2 or 3. I wish I'd taken him in my dynasty. That was a big flub by me, but
I have him in dynasty, which is all that matters to me.
I took the Bills receiver over him, unfortunately. From Joe Falon, flex PPR. I'm assuming it's full PPR. I think he would say at this point. Zamir White, Joshua Palmer, or Jackson Smith in Jigba. I like this question. I really do, because I think there's good options here. I know you're not high on Zamir White like I kind of am, but I do like this question.
I'd go Palmer and chase the upside there.
I would too.
Against the Raiders' front 7 is phenomenal. The secondary is not great. Josh Palmer, to me, is the most talented receiver in that group at the moment. McConkey could definitely step up there. But Palmer, week 1, last year without Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Well, actually, Palmer's career, he averages over 12 points per game without those 2. So I would trust Palmer on the outside to be the best wide receiver week 1, with more touchdown upside to me than I do see with Zamir White.
I would too. This is a 4:00 game. If by any sliver of a chance Tyler Lockett is out, I'd slot JSN in there. But I don't think Lockett's going to be out. I think he's going to play.
I don't hate that.
So Deshaun wrote that his opponent had A.J. Brown and Josh Jacobs in that question with Daniels and Dak. Did you have anybody playing, or are you projected to lose by 20? Because if you're projected to lose by 20, I would play Jaden Daniels. Nick might disagree with me, and that's okay. But if you are projected to lose by 20, I know A.J. Brown had an awesome game. I faced him as well. I would probably play Jaden Daniels. But, let us know what your scoring situation is.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys for the questions. We'll keep answering your questions as long as you keep answering them. We're going to get through all these games before we log off, and we'll keep answering questions. So, next up, the Arizona Cardinals against the Buffalo Bills. There is really no injury news in this one, Nick. I don't know if we have to really talk about it too much, but I think Michael Wilson is kind of a sneaky PPR play. If you're in a 12-man or 14-man and need a flex play, especially if you have like a T. Higgins out, and I think he's kind of sneaky. And I think it'll be really interesting to see the snap shares and the targets on the Bills offense and how they operate. And we'll see who kind of breaks out from there. And obviously, the Cardinals side of things as well.
Here's the way I'm going to break these games down. I'm very simply going to say, what's the question I want answered from this week going into next week? And for me, I want to see 2 things. I want to see one thing from each team. The Cardinals, I want to see how dominant Marvin Harrison Jr. is early on. Is he going to get 10 targets out the gate, or is it going to be the Trey McBride, Kyler Murray running James Conner show and he's a 5-target guy week 1. Does not hit the panic button, obviously, but where you drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., he needs to get like 150 targets this year to be fantasy dominant. Buffalo, Nick mentioned it already. I want to see what this wide receiver room looks like. I want to see who's out there on those two wide receiver sets. I want to see is Khalil Shakir taking a step up? Is Coleman getting a lot more time on the field than we expected? Is Curtis Samuel the safety blanket for the team? Like those things that we kind of expect. I want to know what they are, and then I want to know where Josh Allen's putting that football.
All right, so Deshaun faced Lamar, Josh Jacobs, and AJ Brown. He's down 75-10. I'm Team Jaden Daniels on this one.
Yeah, you might have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of good luck, Deshaun.
What was Lamar's number? Was it 25? I didn't face him anymore.
I think it was higher than that because he had close to 300 passing yards, 100 rushing yards.
He had a good game.
And then the touchdown. Yeah, he had a great game.
All right, from Triple Double, Rams Lions tonight. Who do you have winning, and who do you think will have the big fantasy performers? Winning, I don't do a ton of winning and losing on the show, but from fantasy performers, everybody except for Kyren Williams, according to my Boom Bust team. I have Stafford as my all-boom quarterback of the week. I think he's going to have a great week. Same with Jared Goff. So look at your quarterback options, guys. But if you drafted Stafford and Goff as your backups, they might be your starters this week. Amon Ra should be great. Nick, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but it should just be points galore. This could be like that Chiefs and Rams game from like 6 years ago. It was just score.
What a way to open the season that would be. I love it. I agree. I'm starting everybody in this game. I do like Kyren Williams more than Nick.
I'm starting Kyren if I have him, but I don't.
But Nick's rationale for not liking Kyren is there, and I would advise go listen back to our last episode where we talked all boom, all bust, and you could see the full breakdown of that. But this is going to be a shootout and nothing short of it. At least that's what we all hope to see.
All right. So Jordan's asking, would I rather Rico Dowdle or Jordan Mason? I'd still say Dowdle because you can't predict an injury. Now, you can hold somebody on your bench in case of an injury, but you can't predict it. You have to play with the hand that you have right now. Rico Dowdle has an opportunity to carve out the starting role. Jordan Mason does not have any chances to carve out the starting role. So I would rather keep the guy who potentially could be a starter than a guy who is going to be a backup pending an injury. Because if we want to play the injury game, I mean, we could just go down the list of every backup running back.
So here's what I would say. Type in the comments, send us your entire running back room because that makes a difference to me. If your running backs are
he sent us the other options earlier. I'll pull it back up.
Yeah, go for it. But if your running backs are reliable,
Bucky Irving,
is it that roster?
Yeah. You didn't like Bucky Irving. I like Bucky Irving because I think injury or not, I think Bucky Irving has a chance to become the starter and eat into that role. I was banging the drum last year for people to play Rachaad White, and he did have a good season, but he was not efficient. Every single metric screamed inefficient. It was all over the fantasy community throughout the offseason, and the coaches are glowing about Bucky Irving. Do I think that he's going to be the starter in 4 weeks? No. It looks like this comment is not there on YouTube for some reason. That's so weird.
I saw him type it earlier. But, I mean, here's my logic. Rico Dowdle, you're going to know week 1 or week 2. He belongs on the waiver wire or he belongs on your roster and in a starting role. There's no in between for that. Jordan Mason, you're going to need to roster until or if CMC goes down with injury. The difference is if CMC goes down with injury and you need running back desperately, Jordan Mason is 100% going into that lineup in a full-time starting role, no questions asked. But if you're going to need someone a week from now to play in your RB2 spot, it's Rico Dowdle. So I need to see your roster construction better because if you went 2 running backs early on and you just need someone for maybe a bye week, I mean, this is probably the RB5 or 6 in your lineup. I want the guy that I think is going to be able to start early on based on that. Like if you went 0 running back, it's Rico Dowdle the hold. If you went RB heavy early, then Jordan Mason's the hold. So it really does come down to that. And looking at this,
Gibbs, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, Jerome Ford, Devin Singletary, Dowdle. I mean, he's a lot of running backs. And on top of that, on top of that, I think he's still. Is this a different league or just the same league? Let us know if it's the same league or not.
I think this one's a different league.
Different league. Okay.
So it was Bucky Irving. It was Devin Singletary.
Well, I don't know if it's the same league or not. Is Jordan? Is this the league that you had Bucky Irving in? Bucky Irving and McLaughlin and Jalen.
Oh, yeah, it is because it was Ford, the other one.
If this is the same league, you have a ton of running backs, man.
So if this is, I mean, honestly, if this is the case, then Devin Singletary is the one I don't want in the group.
I'm kind of with Nick there. Yeah, I think I'd rather bump Singletary down. But I don't really love Jordan Mason. I mean, how many leagues is he rostered? He's rostered in leagues because of the injury scare, but then you're just playing.
Here's what I'll also say: if CMC is not hurt,
he never had Irving. Maybe it's a different. Maybe I got people confused. Okay, I might have gotten comments confused. Maybe that was why. That's completely my fault. Okay, so let's go back to the original question. Would you rather Rico Dowdle or Jordan Mason with these running backs? I think I'd rather bump Singletary out. I think I'm with you. But I think I'd still keep Singletary because I think he's a starter in the league right now, and Jordan Mason isn't. And I want starters. I don't want a backup to the best running back in the league.
I would keep the lineup as you have it this week. I would say a week or two go by. CMC's probably still healthy, hopefully. And then you pick up Jordan Mason if there's like no one else that you really like on the waivers or someone you're desperate to get rid of, like a Singletary. If 4 weeks from now we find out Nick Chubb's back and then you don't need Jerome Ford anymore, like there's a ton of combinations. I wouldn't stress it. I'd keep your lineup as is for now.
The other thing is Jordan Mason the starter if McCaffrey goes down, or are they signing 3 different backs into the Kyle Shanahan offense? Like, I don't know. I did find the Bucky Irving question. It was not Jordan, so that's my fault. It's a bad hosting job by me. All right. And Nick, I like the way you're doing this. We're going to go through game by game, and I'll let you take the reins. So, sure. Titans at the Chicago Bears. I think they're at the Bears. Or I think the Bears are home, I should say. I know the matchup. DeAndre Hopkins is questionable with a knee injury. Isn't it like an MCL or something? Like, it's like, I don't think he's going to play. He probably shouldn't play. And then on the Bears side of things, Keenan Allen is questionable with a heel. He should play, is the report.
So on the Chicago Bears side, the question for me is how dominant is Rome Odunze out the gate? Like, and now we have the Keenan Allen injury, so maybe he's on more of a snap share or a time crunch, time limit, whatever. Is Rome Odunze going to get an 80% time share on the field? And then obviously that leads to how good really is Caleb Williams out the gate. Nick's a USC guy. I think Caleb Williams is going to be phenomenal. I really think he's going to be the total game changer for that Bears franchise, based off what I've seen in preseason and what this roster looks like. I don't know if they have Super Bowl aspirations like some analysts think, but they're definitely near that fringe playoff team. I definitely think that. And this is going to be a very good football team. The question is, how good is Caleb Williams? Is Caleb Williams going to be CJ Stroud plus rookie season? Is he going to have a Justin Herbert rookie season? Or is he going to have, that normal QB slump of double-digit turnovers, right around 20 touchdowns and 3,700 yards, which is fine for a rookie quarterback. It's not fine for where you took DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. On the other side, I'm super high on the Tennessee Titans.
One question, Nick. I just want to stop you real quick. Sure. Buffalo Boy, we did just answer this question and gave a pretty in-depth response about it, but we're going to give you a good answer as well. While Nick is giving his take on the Titans, let us know what your matchup score is right now. Because if you were facing Saquon or Pacheco, like whatever, let us know what your score is and let us know what your projection is. Like how many points you projected to win or lose by, because that will affect how we answer this question. Because you might want a guy with higher upside. So let us know about that. We'll get to your question in 1 second. But Nick, your biggest question you want answered from the Tennessee Titans side of things.
I think the Titans are going to be very good. My fantasy questions are, what's the snap share between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears? And then is Calvin Ridley going to step in and just be absolutely dominant game changer? If you remember in Jacksonville last year, he opened week 1 and with it by halftime, he was like 8 catches, 100 yards. And
I think I wanted to eat my words because I was anti Calvin Ridley all off season.
And then it turned out over the course of the season, he fell short of it. So I want to see, is Calvin Ridley going to be similar to last year? And where the ADP you took him at was, like, he could be what he was last year and outperform ADP. So I just want to know, Calvin Ridley, as he's getting older, is he still that same fantasy player?
All right, so Buffalo boy, Jaden Daniels or Dak Prescott? We did just answer this question, but it's kind of on a matchup by matchup basis. So if you're still here watching, let us know what your matchup is. Let us know how many points you're down or up, and let us know what your projection is, and here's why. This is my take. Nick could have a different take than me, and that's okay. Jaden Daniels going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who gave up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks last year at 18.9. They also gave up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers at 30.8. That means it's a positive matchup for both Jaden Daniels and those receivers. On the Dak Prescott side of things, he's facing the Cleveland Browns, who allowed the 4th least amount of points to quarterbacks at 14.1. They also allowed the 2nd least amount of points to wide receivers at 21.8. They also lost Tony Pollard. If I'm the Browns, I'm double teaming CeeDee Lamb the entire game. Yeah. So it's a good matchup for Jaden Daniels, bad matchup for Dak, but Daniels is a rookie quarterback. It doesn't matter what he did in preseason, doesn't matter what he did in college, doesn't matter what he did in camp. Need to see it on the field. I personally feel like you play Jaden Daniels if you need the higher upside, if you're down in your matchup or projected to lose by 20 points. If you're projected to win, you probably play Dak week 1. That's my take.
I think I agree with Nick to an extent. I think Dak is so much more the reliable play. You want to see Jaden Daniels explode, and Nick and I are all in on Daniels this year. But for week 1, again, you have to see it from Daniels before you could just roll him out there and take your shot. Dak is somebody that a lot of people were swayed against, but again, he's been a top 5 quarterback for fantasy for plenty of seasons. I remember the one year I had him in our league, and he opened the season with like 4 straight 400-yard games.
He was the quarterback 1 for those first 8 weeks.
And then he went down with the knee injury, and he was like on pace to have the best season ever as a quarterback. Not to say he would have, but like everything lined up for Dak. And when Dak's clicking and firing on cylinders, like he's a very good fantasy quarterback.
Good stat sheet stuffer.
He is probably the GOAT stat sheet stuffer at quarterback at fantasy quarterback.
All right, so if you still want to send us your situation, you can, and we'll talk about that. All right, next game, New England Patriots against the Cincinnati Bengals. Nothing from the Patriots side of things, but on the Broncos side of things, T. Higgins is a doubtful hamstring injury, a really weird hamstring injury, because after Thursday's practice, he said he felt great. Didn't practice Friday. Jamar Chase, rest/illness, which really just means contract dispute. We'll see where that goes. So your biggest questions for this one?
Quick question for the Bengals side. If Chase is not out there, who are the wide receivers getting the reps? Because Tyler Boyd was a reliable fantasy football player when one of these 2 receivers was out last year. So is it Jermaine Burton getting the rub? Is it, I'm not even going to announce his name, even though we've had 15 corrections in the chat and Nick said it one way. But
I think there's one correction.
Andre, whatever his name is, like, who is that guy? There you go.
Andre Yoshivas.
So is that the guy that's getting the timeshare? Or
play this week.
And then on the New England side of things is how quickly can we get Drake May in there? Because I do not want to see this team. I do not want a piece of this offense in my lineup until Drake May's in there and we see maybe the upside of a better quarterback.
All right, here's a question from Triple Double. If Field starts, could Pickens have numbers similar to what DJ Moore did last year? Nick, you're the Fields guy, so I'll let you take it. But today, me and you are both off of Pickens, going up against AJ Terrell, Justin Simmons back there. I'm off on Pickens today. I have him in a league, and I think I'm benching him. I think I benched him for Terry McLaurin or Christian Watson or something.
I would say no. I think Pickens is a very talented receiver. Here's would be my woes. The Steelers' offensive line is not as good as the Bears' offensive line. B, the division in the AFC, in the NFC North, is a lot more favorable for those shootouts. It's the Lions secondary, it's the Packers secondary, it's the Vikings secondary. Those are 3 of the worst in football, which DJ Moore was able to eat up a lot of points in. Now he's going to go up against the AFC North, who has the best division in football, the toughest front 7, some of the better secondaries. So to me, I don't think Pickens has as easy of a schedule and opportunity as DJ Moore did. He's going to be facing tougher matchups. That's not to say Pickens can't be great for fantasy, because I do see the talent there. But I don't think he can be a top 10 wide receiver in this offense.
The other thing is DJ Moore's stats last year really weren't that much better than Pickens. 96 receptions, 1,364 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Pickens last year was 63 receptions, 1,140, and 5 touchdowns. So I think Pickens did more with his opportunities, with his receptions being 30 receptions lower, and only really sacrificing 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I would rather Russell Wilson be in there. I'm a Russ homer. I always will be. I think Pickens is a better receiver than both Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. So I think this would be the best receiver that Russell Wilson has played with since being a Seahawk. If I'm a Pickens owner, which I actually am in a league, I would rather have Russell Wilson in there. I think really? Fields might. Wow. I think Fields might make the offense a bit more dynamic, but in terms of a guy who's a pocket passer, can sling the rock, I want Russell Wilson in there.
Another thing that would worry me is Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator. We watched it not work with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, the 2 biggest pass catchers. So
correct, but those quarterbacks are really bad.
Yeah, no, 100%. The quarterback play was nowhere near the same. But to me, we've watched enough of the not targeting the wide receiver one and tight end one in game scripts that were positive. I don't think the Steelers will be in that situation. And between Najee, Warren, and Cordarrelle Patterson, you're going to see 30 rushing attempts a game. And Justin Fields too. So.
All right, from Melissa, she says she loves the Primetime Fantasy Football podcast. We appreciate that. Next game, the Houston Texans against the Indianapolis Colts. Josh Downs is out with an ankle injury, so that actually does slot in an opportunity for Adonai Mitchell. But Nick, what are your biggest question marks for these 2 teams? Which, although they're competitive, good teams, I think there's a lot of question marks both from fantasy and real NFL talk.
So there's one thing about the Texans that I've 180'd on after all my drafts, and I wish I, didn't. I think Stephon Diggs is going to be a lot better for fantasy than we thought. And maybe that's just because I've watched him fall down so many boards and wish I could have taken him in a league to take the flyer, but he's probably going to be the slot guy. Nico Collins was injured, missed some time last year. Tank Dell missed some time last year. Diggs is kind of a reliable, proven starter. I know it didn't look great on the back half of the year in Buffalo, but I don't know. I don't know if I love him I don't love him for fantasy, but I feel like he might be better than a lot of us anticipated. So my question really is, what does this wide receiving core look like? Can they really pace out to have 3 guys finish in the top 30, which has only been done once before, which was Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, and I believe it was Deontay Johnson as those 3 receivers. Yep, so
you're right on that.
We'll see if that can happen again. And clearly, I believe these 3 are more talented than those 3. But we have to wait and see on that. On the Colts side of the ball, I mean, the question just is Anthony Richardson. I mean, what is he going to be for fantasy football and for actual football? Is Jonathan Taylor going to benefit? Is Michael Pittman going to have similar usage that he did last year? Is Richardson going to take off and run so much more than we expect? Where, like we mentioned about Justin Fields and Jaden Daniels, you do not need to be great at football to be great at fantasy football. But the amount of draft capital he had to put into AR, he really needs to outperform those expectations and be elite for fantasy. Like Justin Fields, even years ago, not last year, but 2 years ago, you were taking him in like the 8th, 9th, 10th round, which is where, your Dak Prescott's, your Jared Goff's, like those kind of guys go. So for AR to be elite and deliver on his ADP, he needs to be extremely good at football and fantasy football. And this is one of the higher over-under games on the week. So we'll see if he can do it. But that's probably one of the biggest question marks for fantasy this entire week is what is Anthony Richardson going to be?
All right, we got about 8-ish or so more games to run through, guys. So keep asking those questions once we do finish the last game. As long as there are no questions, we will log off. We'll keep going until you guys are done. All right, Jacksonville Jaguars against the Miami Dolphins. Really no injury news in this one, although Bradley Chubb looks to be out with an ACL and Jalen Ramsey with a hamstring is questionable. I'm sure Ramsey's going to play, but those 2 injuries will only make things easier for the Jaguars offense.
So the questions on each side, very simply, what does the Jaguars wide receiver situation look like? Is Brian Thomas this superstar that Nick and I project him out to be? Is Gabe Davis on the field a lot more than we expect? Is Christian Kirk?
I want to see the snap shares on the Jaguars side of things.
Yeah, I think they're one of the receiving cores that could go win you the fantasy league. based on the upside that we saw from them in the prior years and their ADPs for those guys. Like that's a very interesting situation. And Miami, I know Nick will agree. It's what does this running back room look like? Is Devon Achane going to go get 70% of the snaps and go ahead and explode for 30 to 40 points against a weak defensive running team? Maybe. Is Raheem Mostert going to still be out there 50% of the time? And it's like, why did we draft Devon Achane in the second round? Which both are definitely in the realm of possibilities, but those are definitely the two biggest questions.
All right, next game, the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. Injuries here. Jonathan Brooks obviously out with an ACL over the first 4 weeks. Nothing big nothing huge on the Saints side of things. A couple injuries on the defense, but nothing big.
Saints question: How many rushing attempts is Taysom Hill getting with Kendre Miller out? It could be 1, could be 2, it could be double digits. And if it is in that double digit range, Taysom Hill's a must start for the next 3 weeks. No questions asked. On the Carolina side of things, how quickly is Deontay Johnson going to get implemented over there? Is Xavier Legette going to be out? And a dominant rookie, new coach, who was the offensive coordinator for the Bucs, who knows a thing or two about downfield receivers, having played with Mike Evans for so long, and delivering such great fantasy seasons for those guys. Clearly nowhere near the quarterback play that he had in Tampa, or nearly as big of an arm, but Deontay Johnson might be a real big benefit. So let's see. He is the one that I think could have the DJ Moore Carolina type season, where it's literally 10 targets per game, but they're just so inefficient and so inaccurate, where it only leads to like 80 to 90 catches on it, and it's not a great fantasy season. So that's going to be my big question.
Red zone game of the week, the Vikings at the Giants. No injuries in either of these two games. The injuries will be to the fans watching this game that do not have red zone. Thoughts and prayers.
So listen, Sam Darnold, I think he sucks. It's not just this hat wearing, it's the Carolina hat, the 49ers hat, every team that's let him go. Apparently the Vikings think they see something in him. I want to see what is Justin Jefferson's role in this team. We know he's the wide receiver 1. The question is he 15 targets wide receiver 1, or is he 10 targets wide receiver 1? And where is that on the field? If Sam Darnold's throwing in the ball past 20 yards, I do not trust Justin Jefferson to have a good season because he's just so inaccurate. And this Vikings offensive line is not great. That Giants defensive line is very talented. So that's definitely a big concern. On the Giants side of things, I think this is the number one question everyone wants. We want to see what Malik Neighbors is. I mean, there's been so much hype at a camp. There's been so much hype going into the season. Like everything makes sense for Malik Neighbors to be this great talent with awful quarterback play. And so, both these teams have to deal with it. You have Justin Jefferson, superstar receiver, number 1 receiver in football, most talented guy by like wide margin at this point. And Malik Neighbors, who we think could be one of the most talented rookie receivers ever, just both with awful quarterback play. So let's see what these two workload is and where they can actually finish in fantasy given it.
All right. The Las Vegas Raiders against the Los Angeles Chargers. DJ Chark is out with a hip for the Chargers, so that gives other receivers a little tiny bump. But that's really it.
So Raiders, quite simply, what is Minshew with this team? Does he have similar play to like he did with the Colts? Because if he does that, the Raiders are a fringe playoff team. They won 8 games last year, and foreseeably had an upgrade at quarterback. So maybe that's another win or two for them. I don't see it that way. I don't think that that's what they are. But if that is, Devontae Adams is going to be better than we thought. Jacoby Myers might still be good. Brock Bowers might be better late in the year. I don't foresee that happening, but that's a question that we definitely need answered. And on the Chargers side of the things, we don't know what this personnel is going to look like. Period, flat out. We don't know what the wide receiving core is going to be. We don't know who's going to be the 1 there, who's the 2, who's the 3. We don't know who's the starting running back, but we do know that Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, they got the coach and they got the quarterback right. So, and the word is that they upgraded the offensive line huge in the preseason. The Chargers running backs were able to run the most amount of yards before contact, which is a big thing. If J.K. Dobbins is getting that, If Gus Edwards is getting that, one of them is going to be a very good fantasy play week to week. And then obviously we don't know the wide receiver core yet. So those are two big things that we got to find out on the Chargers side.
All right. We have 5 more games left, guys. So if you have any more fantasy football related questions, make sure to drop them in the chat and we will answer them to help fix your lineups, flex plays, anything else that we can help you with. All right. Denver Broncos against my Seattle Seahawks. Only injury designation is Tyler Lockett with a thigh. He's questionable. The beat report is saying he's going to play. But if he doesn't play, it's a big spot for JSN.
Yeah. And the question is JSN. I forget the statistic, and I really wish I remember it, but there was some stat about him being the only rookie receiver with that much time on the field to underperform 80. Like, it was a really weird stat and something that was such
on the field of locks. They ran a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, but like you've said on the show a couple of times, they ran the least amount of plays in the league.
Yeah,
and he wasn't dropping balls. Like, he wasn't Quentin Johnston. He looked good when he got the ball. He just didn't get the ball.
Yeah, so my question is going to be, what is he with this team, and how much does Seattle ramp up the offense without Pete Carroll? And then on the Broncos side of things, I mean, my only question is, are they winning 3 or 4 games this year? I mean, like, I think this team is so terrible, and they've let most of their talent go. I really don't see a good year for the Broncos. I might bite that bullet, but I really think that this team is terrible. I don't want any fantasy assets in this game. I mean, I guess we want it to be fun and say what it could be. It's like, what does the running back look like? Is Jaleel McLaughlin going to eat a lot?
I think the running back room is definitely the bigger question.
So, I mean, but that's really it. I mean, I don't see a lot of fantasy upside from this team, kind of like the Patriots, but a couple bigger names at least.
All right. Dallas Cowboys against the Cleveland Browns.
Cowboys, quite simply, what's this running back room? We've heard Zeke, we've heard Dowdle all offseason. They bring in Dalvin Cook, who I don't think is going to have a big role, but he's not signing with the team to not get touches. So who knows what that means, but we'll see. And then on the Cleveland Browns side of the ball, is it Jerry Jeudy or Elijah Moore as the second receiver on this team? Jerry Jeudy got a lot of love in Denver for being talented. I don't think he is that. I think he gave up on his team a lot. And maybe my guy, Jameis Winston, I just saw we got the question from Raul Havana, as Nick said, has Watson been benched? No, he hasn't, but we all love our guy Jabu. We love our who eats the W's.
I do love my guy Jabu.
So we love him. So I'm all for him, but we do want to see what this wide receiving core looks like and who is that too.
All right. 2 more games left, 3 more games. All right. Commanders and Tampa Bay Bucks. I think we talked about this game more than any, honestly.
Yeah, it's been a popular one. I'll keep it brief. Tampa Bay, as Nick mentioned, Bucky Irving. Rashad White had one of the highest snap shares at running back last season. Is that lower? Is Bucky Irving going to truly eat into that early on? Because if that's the case, then yes, he is a must roster on your team. Because over the course of the season, you would expect that so he maybe overtakes him by the bye week. I do think they're later in the year this year, but a good thing to keep note of. And then on the Washington side, another guy I'm really looking forward to. We talked about Malik Neighbors. My guy is Jaden Daniels. Like, I really want to see Jaden Daniels this week.
Yeah, I'm excited about to see what the Jaden Daniels show is. All right, Sunday Night Football, the Rams at the Lions. No injuries in this one, except for Jimmy Garoppolo is out with a suspension for the Rams. What is he suspended for?
I have no idea.
I don't know either.
I saw that pop up and I was like, what?
Carly also says she loves the Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast. We appreciate you. We appreciate the love. Sunday Night Football, Nick. I mean, what do we want to see besides points galore? I don't know what your questions are on this one.
The one for the Rams is definitely, is it Cooper Kupp or Puka Nakua's offense? I think whoever comes out week 1 with the more targets is the clear answer to that question. And then the Detroit Lions, the only question I have is Jameson Williams. I mean, is this guy going to be what we all thought he would be coming out of college, which is this elite burner, downfield threat, opens up the offense for the rest of the guys? But that's it. I mean, we know these two teams. We know who to start in fantasy. We know who the studs are. There's no one in between. It's either superstar or it's a bust player for each of these teams outside of Jameson Williams.
All right. And our last game, Nick, I think I could take this one if you want. The New York Jets going up against San Francisco 49ers. Only injury designation is good old Christian McCaffrey with a calf and Achilles injury, questionable. He's going to play. And Hassan Reddick, contract, questionable.
Yeah. Here's my question. The Jets said that their offense, or the Jets have done a lot of things to improve that offensive line. My question is, can Aaron Rodgers make it to the second drive of the game this season? And my real question is, can he make it through the season? Because if he makes it through the season, I would absolutely smash that the Jets are making the playoffs this year because the schedule is very favorable. The offense is loaded. And I guess if we want to say the fantasy question, it can't just be Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall on a playoff level team. So is Mike Williams going to be what Mike Williams was with the Chargers, which was the wide receiver too, but still week to week was 15 plus points per game when he was healthy? Is it going to be Alan Lazard, who, I don't think he's great, but with Aaron Rodgers averaged over 12 fantasy points per game in Green Bay? Like, who is the number 2 here for the Jets? And if they do not have a 2 by week 3 or 4, are they calling up the Raiders, who are going to be frustrated with Gardner Minshew? On the 49ers side of the ball, it's how hungover are you from the Super Bowl? I mean, are your guys like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and
Trent Williams is out with the contract too.
Williams, and you have Brock Purdy playing awful in the training camp. Like, there were reports that Brock Purdy had ridiculous amount of interceptions. So what does that look like over the course of the year? And we'll see. But I think that both these teams, 2 defensive juggernauts going up against each other. I think this is going to be a very good Monday Night Football game as long as my guys can make it through it.
All right. Well, that is our week 1 live show for week 1 of 2024. So thank you all that joined. We got a ton of questions, went almost 2 hours. Really happy to answer all of your questions, and hopefully we're right. I mean, we won't be right about everything that's fantasy, but hopefully you join us next week, Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time for our week 2 live show on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. If you watch the show today, I don't think everything was basically from YouTube. So we're going to stream on the other platforms, but highly recommend getting your questions over to YouTube. That is the best place to ask your questions. So every week, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. If you enjoyed the show and you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification every time you'll get a notification when we go live or drop a new video. You'll get 2 shows from us per week most of the time, depending on our schedules. Those shows are available both on YouTube and our audio streaming platforms if you prefer to listen there in the car or something like that, on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Anchor. If you have any other questions, go to our social media channels, PrimeTimeFFPod on Instagram. PrimeTime Fantasy Football Podcast on Instagram, PrimeTimeFFPod on Twitter. You can ask us any questions, especially when those injury reports come out. We're always happy to answer them. So thank you guys for joining us. Best of luck in week 1 and enjoy some NFL football.